when we set boundaries, we are building stronger relationships. I kind of think of them as being built on truth rather than falsehoods and lies, right? I would say there's nothing worse, but I feel like there is things worse, but there's nothing worse than saying yes to someone because you feel obligated, you feel the pressure, you feel you have to or you should. Then
It's a
you do
horrible
that
feeling.
thing. It's
Horrible.
horrible. And then how do you show up? You show up disgruntled, kind of with a little bit of like a grudge. Maybe you just resent the fact that they asked you it and you're just doing it because you have, right? You're not showing up as you want to and with your heart, out, right? You're showing up like, oh, I have to do this.
Hey there, Vibers. Welcome to the Vibe with Kai podcast, where we keep it real, we keep it relatable, and we keep it a little bit funny as we dive into all things mental health, ADHD, and introversion. My name is Kai. I'm your host, and each week we're going to tackle life struggles with honesty, humor, and a whole lot of heart. So whether you're here for practical advice or a little validation or just a laugh about what life is like as an adult in today's world, listen, you are in the right place. We are not about toxic positivity here. We are all about being genuine to each other and to ourselves. And we're talking about real things. And we want to encourage each other and remind you that you are not alone. With that said, my friends, sit back, relax, and let's vibe through this together and enjoy today's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast.
What up, Vibers? It's your boy, Kai. Welcome to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. In today's episode, we're talking about boundaries, why they're hard, why they matter, and how people with ADHD can actually get better at setting them. Something that I very much enjoy talking about. I'm a big person lately about setting boundaries, and I'm looking forward to talking to my guest today. If you've ever said yes when you meant to say no, this episode is for you. Joining me today is Heidi Fishbein, an ADHD and Christian life coach, author of Living on Purpose, and founder of Journey ADHD Coaching. She helps women grow in faith and shine bright with ADHD. And I want to welcome our wonderful guest today, Heidi Fishbein, to the show. Hi, Heidi.
Hey, Kai. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. No, thank you. I'm super excited because even before we started recording today, the energy is there. Like I can, even though we're not in person, like the energy, I could just feel your energy, and that warms my heart so much.
So cool. I hear that a lot. I'm still trying to figure out what that thing is exactly, but awesome.
I think it's just like the kindness that exudes from you. I think that's what it is. Like it's just, you're very personable. Like we've known each other for 27 minutes, and you're just incredibly personable, and that's always a refreshing thing, in today's world. So I want to dive right into it, Heidi. I want you to take us back for a moment. I want to start at the beginning. What led you to become both an ADHD coach and a Christian life coach? How did this whole thing come about for you?
Yeah, well, I can start by saying it was definitely God-led. So many, many years ago, it feels weird to say that, but many years ago, my family was going through a few ADHD diagnoses. And back then I knew really nothing about ADHD other than growing up with a brother who has severe ADHD. So a lot of the focus was on him and his treatment, but I didn't really know much about it. So when my son got diagnosed with ADHD, that began, of course, that journey of figuring out, how can I support my son? How can I show up in a way that is going to help him in his challenges? And of course, like many others in that journey, I too got diagnosed with ADHD, realizing I also resonate with a lot of what he was experiencing and in my own way. And through that, one of the treatment that I was actually referred to was an ADHD coach. At the time, I had no idea what that was, but I was at the point where I would do anything and try anything. So I did it. I bought 12 sessions. I remember this so clearly. I bought 12 and I didn't even finish them. I was, I think, 5 or 6 sessions in, Kai, and I'm like, this is it. Like, this is literally what I'm supposed to do with my life. I knew it so clearly. But because of my Christian faith, I also knew that God wanted me to combine that and bring that together. So I remember saying to my husband, I'm like, do you think that there's Christian coaching? And he's like, I don't think so. And I'm like, no, there has to be. So I did a little research. Lo and behold, there is. And I remember going to church. So I go to a Pentecostal church and I said to my pastor, I'm like, Pastor, I want to do Christian coaching. Like, I don't even know where to start. He's like, Heidi, we have one starting tomorrow.
Oh,
Now,
perfect.
I am the most impulsive human that you could ever meet. I like to
There's that
say
ADHD right there, right?
I like to say, and I like to reframe it, I am spontaneous. My husband would
Yeah.
disagree, but I am spontaneous. So I said to my husband, I'm like, babe, I've got to do this. I have to get trained in this. So he allowed my impulsivity and I registered and I started. And as I started that, I actually wanted to do the ADHD training as well. So I did them simultaneously. They overlapped quite a bit, much different. But I took them both at the same time. And right away, I put my flag in the sand and I said, I am an ADHD and Christian life coach. And I primarily now work with Christian women, families that are managing ADHD, whether the mom, the father, the kids, whoever has it. So I really work with that family unit to really support them. And the biggest piece is realizing that you are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. There is no mistake with how your brain works. It's just figuring out, how can I use this as a gift rather than seeing it as a challenge? So it's a big perspective shift. But that's really how I began and now where I am. And through that passion, I knew right away I want to teach people this, because going through coach training was, to be honest, very confusing. And there was a lot of
I'm sure.
concepts and figuring that out for myself. And I knew there is a way for me to support other coaches that can go out and make this impact. So it's not just me making an impact. Now it's all kinds of coaches going out and doing it.
Right. That's amazing. And I'm so happy that you mentioned how you approach it from a family perspective, because I think that's important, especially for you, because you had mentioned that, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that your son was diagnosed first and then you were diagnosed, right? Like, what point did you realize, wait, I might, this might be me as well? Like, was there a certain point or a certain situation or a certain struggle that you had that you're like, oh, wait, hold on a second, I think this is affecting me too?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. So I had a major car accident. And through that car accident, I actually had to relearn a lot of basic things. So I had an
Yeah.
occupational therapist, I had a lot of different support. But through that, what I realized was, I have had these challenges and struggles my whole life. But the thing is that there was so much focus on my little brother, because he was what we would call that squeaky wheel, right? The
Hmm.
one that would be getting in trouble or disobeying and getting caught.
Yeah.
Whereas I was more of a people pleaser and someone who would, I went with my mom every week grocery shopping, put everything away, cleaned the house. I did, teacher's pet. I always have to chuckle. I was front row. You need a volunteer? I'll do it. Right. So a lot of the challenges I
You were
had,
that person.
I
You
was
were
that
that
person,
person.
and I own it and I love it. And it's what
I
got me
love
through
it.
school.
I love
And
it.
so, but because of that, I kind of just skated by, and my challenges were masked by my people pleasing and how I would show up. But as I got older, I actually call my husband the boundary king. So I don't know, he
Mm,
usually listens to these things, but
yeah.
he's the boundary king. And when I met him 12 years ago, there was so many things in my world and so many people taking advantage of me, but that was my life always. So I had no idea. Right. So with all of my ADHD symptoms, all of that, that was just so normal to me that I didn't know. And no one spoke that truth and love around me, because the focus was always somewhere else. And then I grew up, became an adult, moved to a whole other province. And then I met my husband and he's like, Heidi, what's going on here? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Right. So it was really, I always think of, he just took that fog away and helped me see kind of reality, the rose colored glasses. So I think it wasn't one moment, Kai. It was
Yeah.
rather a period of time where I started to realize, like, hey, I've had these struggles, whether I had a car accident. So I have a traumatic brain injury as well. But with that, I realized these are things that have been there. It just got exacerbated with the head injury. So
Mhm.
I had to relearn everything and realize so much and shift so much.
Right, right. That's always scary. I'm really happy that you're able to like sit here and speak about this, because I'm sure there's going to be people that are listening right now that are like, wait, I think I like they're going to just connect with your story in a way that they may not be able to connect with other people's story, which is why I'm so happy that you're sharing it. And you wrote a book called Living on Purpose, which I love that title. What what inspired that title? You know how like sometimes like somebody will like either do something or come up with something, and you're like, wait, why didn't I think of that? That's me like when I'm watching other content creators. I'm like, how did they come up with that? So you wrote a book, Living on Purpose. What inspired that title? And how does that reflect the journey that you were just talking about ADHD and faith?
Yeah. Yeah, and I wrote it specifically to be a workbook because
Hmm.
I think for us, for ADHD brains, a lot of us, it works so much better for us to engage with the content in some way. And the living on purpose, I actually just branded it. It's like my whole brand now. Everything is living on purpose because I think for so many years I didn't live on purpose. I lived for other people. I lived to satisfy. I lived to please other people. What they wanted was first, not me. And because of that, I lost who I was. There was a long time where I had no idea what I valued, what I wanted. And even when I started my journey as a coach, I couldn't even tell you what my strengths were. I could tell you what I was really not
Right,
great at, right?
right,
And that's what I want people to not have to go through that as long, right? When we have ADHD and we people please and we don't have boundaries like we're going to talk about today, what often happens is we become this chameleon to people please and to not, ruffle the feathers or make any waves, and we just go with the flow. And then there becomes this point in our life where we're like, something's missing. I feel this like I'm doing well. Maybe I'm successful and I have this and I have a family and I have this, but there's just something missing. Right. And it's often because we don't know who we are. Right. We don't know who we are as with ADHD, but also just our heart and our personality, because I think we're so much
right.
more than our ADHD. Right.
Agreed.
That is a piece of us. Right. But that living on purpose with ADHD is really about digging into who you are, taking away what the world says you are, or even who your friends or your spouse. Who am I really? And what do I value? What am I good at? What are the passions that God has put on my heart? What is the call? What is the purpose of my life? And it's really about digging into that. And most of the women that I work with, that's where we are, is like, I just don't know how to move forward. And often it's going back to, well, who are you? Whose are
Right.
you? Who are you in Christ? How's that showing up in your world? So this workbook is really the opportunity to learn about these things, core values, strengths, and then start to apply them in a way that works for you.
Right. I love that, and I'm glad that you brought up faith here because I want to specifically bring that up. I like for those of you that are listening that don't know, and you and I haven't talked about this. So I growing up, I went to a Christian school. So from preschool up until fourth grade, I went to Faith Christian in Hamilton, New Jersey. Shout out to Hamilton, New Jersey, Faith Christian school. And my family to this day continues to be a big part of the church. My sister just last week actually was ordained, which was just ordained this past week. And I'm really proud of her. So Kay, if you're listening, I'm proud of you. And my mother is in the church choir at her church. My father is in charge of all of the IT and computer and AV stuff at his church. So it's been in my life for quite some time. So I'm curious for you, how does your Christian faith shape the way that you approach coaching adults with ADHD? Like, do, do they have to be people of faith, or is it just something that guides you as you're just coaching people in general?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a little bit of both. So it
Hmm.
depends on who I'm working with. One of the things that I think is really important for any coach is coaching is a partnership. So I'm co-creating how we are going to be together in our work together. So a big piece of that is figuring out, what is your faith? Right? What is your spirituality? And even in addition to that, even if someone says, Heidi, I'm a Christian, I've been a Christian my whole life, I'm going to ask, what is your relationship with Jesus?
Hmm.
How does that show up in your day? Because we can be a Christian and Jesus not be a big part of our world? So that's going to depend on how I bring that into our coaching. So it really is that partnership with someone, but my faith is always guiding who I am and the lens that I see everything, because it's a part of who I am. But there is that self-management on my behalf where I know how to and what to bring into that partnership. So coaching with someone of faith, it's going to look different based on that person that I'm working with, and where they are in their spiritual journey. And one thing about Christian coaching that I just love is it's a partnership between me, the person, and the Holy Spirit, right? It's not my job to create change or to even inspire change. It's my job to help someone quiet the noise of the world so that they can tap into where God is leading them.
Quiet the noise of the world. I feel like that resonates now more than ever in many parts of the world right now. I want to dive into our core topic here, which is ADHD and boundaries. One of my favorite books, I keep it here with me. I don't know if you ever heard of her before, but her name is Judy Hugh. Judy Hugh is her name, and she wrote a book called The Boundary Revolution. And I had her on my podcast a couple years ago, and she introduced me to the concept of setting boundaries. And one of the things that she says that I utilize to this day is the phrase setting boundaries doesn't is not pushing people away. It's protecting your space. Because I think sometimes when people think setting boundaries, they think of like kind of like, pushing people away, but that's not necessarily the case. It's protecting yourself. It's protecting your peace. So I want to talk about this. I want to talk about, why do you feel setting boundaries from an ADHD perspective? Why do you feel setting boundaries is such a tough challenge for us with ADHD? Like, obviously setting boundaries in general is hard just as a human, but for all of us with ADHD, setting boundaries is very, very tough. Why is that?
Yeah. Yeah. What a great question. And I appreciate you bringing that piece in that you learned from that book. And
Mhm,
it is those small statements, even though you met with this lady a long time ago, it's
mhm.
that stuck with you because it's
To this day.
powerful.
To this
When
day. Mhm.
when we set boundaries, we are building stronger relationships. I kind of think of them as being built on truth rather
Mhm.
than falsehoods and lies, right? I would say there's nothing worse, but I feel like there is things worse, but there's nothing worse than saying yes to someone because you feel obligated, you feel the pressure, you feel you have to or you should. Then
It's a
you do
horrible
that
feeling.
thing. It's
Horrible.
horrible.
Hmm.
And then how do you show up? You show up disgruntled, kind of with a little bit of like a grudge. Maybe you just resent the fact that they asked you it and you're just
Yep.
doing it because you have, right? You're not showing up as you want to and with your heart, out, right? You're showing up like, oh, I have to do this, right? I have to be
Right.
here.
You're not showing up as the best version of yourself.
No, no, you're not. And oftentimes for us with ADHD, we're doing that so much that we're burning out. We're not
Exhausting.
able to take care of ourselves. So I kind of think of it as boundaries are really saying, this is me
Mhm.
and that is you, right? I know Dr. Henry Cloud, he explains it kind of as, this is our yard, right? I have my yard with my fence, you have your yard with your fence. And this process actually starts to happen when you're around 2 years old. Have you ever heard the term terrible twos?
Yeah,
So
I have. Yes.
right? So this even tells you what society thinks of boundaries. We've even labeled that time psychologically where we naturally start to separate and become our own person. We've labeled that as society because it's challenging and it's hard as a parent. We've labeled that as terrible twos. When the
Mhm.
reality is that is terrific twos. That is where your little human is starting to make their own choices, have their autonomy, create that healthy separation from parent, guardian to child, right? But it is challenging. It is hard. The good news is if we're sitting here today and we're like, Heidi, that didn't happen when I was 2, that's okay because we can do this at any time, right?
Yeah.
It's the awareness of noticing my boundaries are weak and I want to make that choice to change it. So to your question, I got a little sidetracked there, Kai.
Oh, you're
To your
fine. You're good.
question, people with ADHD, there's a lot of reasons, but I'll just name a few. So I know you talk on your channel about rejection sensitivity,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
So we often can say yes because we are fearful of feeling that rejection, right?
Yes.
my 11-year-old, actually, this is something we are actively working on with him. He'll only ask me for things. He won't ask my husband, because guess who will say no 9 times out of 10? My husband has no problem
Right.
saying no. This is a journey I'm still on, folks, right? I'm not all the way
Yeah.
there, but my son has a hard time hearing no. So if he
Yeah.
comes to me, and for any of you parents out there, he wants Robux all the time. So he plays Roblox and he wants the money on it, little
Yeah.
currency on there. So I will say, go ask your father, so that he is strengthening that muscle. We have to be able to hear no and be
Right.
okay with that, right? And be respectful to the boundary that is being set up, and work through that fear. And I encourage him to do that. I want him to hear no. Even when he hears no from me, it's not the same as hearing no from dad. I don't know why, guys, but it's just
Right.
not.
Right.
Another big one that I see is impulsivity. I openly admitted at the beginning I'm very impulsive, right?
Yeah,
One of
me
the
too.
challenges I've had my whole life is I get genuinely excited. I would
Yeah.
overcommit in the church all the time because I want to do that. You are
Mhm.
offering me this opportunity to serve in this amazing way. Like, yes, done. And then I go home and I look at my schedule and I'm like, wait a
You're like,
minute. Like,
no, wait a second.
right? Like, I actually can't do that. So it's
Yeah.
also just that genuine excitement and impulsivity to do the thing.
Yeah.
So we are just quick to say yes sometimes without processing it. So later on, we'll talk about some strategies that are super simple that we can just start implementing right away. The last one I want to mention, Kai, is difficulty with time awareness. So we often aren't thinking about how much time something will take before we're
Facts.
committing, right? So tied into that impulsivity, giving ourselves a moment to actually process, okay, yes, I want to do this, but what will this look like? What am I saying no to if I say yes to this?
Mm.
There has to be those choices and that balance. What do you think?
I couldn't relate more to everything you just said. Especially when you were talking about overcommitting, because like I am quite literally in that process right now. For those of you that don't know, I direct musicals, right? And that's what I do in my quote free time. I direct musicals, and I got offered a contract from 2 different theater companies a couple years ago to direct some shows this year. And I said yes to both because I was like, yeah, of course. They end up falling on very similar dates. And me being the people pleaser that I am was like, I don't want to make them change things on their end. I'm gonna work it out on my end. And now, and even though I'm fine, but like it's hard because I literally have a musical that I'm directing that opens up next Friday. Oh well, this is airing. But by the time this airs, my first musical will have opened, and I would be in the middle of Tech Week for the next one. So I have 2 Tech Weeks in a row, and 2 giant musicals running at the exact same time. And I'm like looking at my calendar every day. I'm like, how in the heck? Why did I do this to myself? I'm enjoying it, but like this is the result of me being a people pleaser. It just is. And even and you had mentioned number 3 in regards to time management. That's one of my biggest ADHD struggles. I cannot process the passing of time. I can't do it. It's very, very difficult for me. Right in front of me right now, I have the timer that I like when I'm working on things. It no lie, it goes off every 10 minutes. When I'm actively working on a project, it goes off every 10 minutes because it reminds me to take a look at the clock. That's all it's for, is to take a look at the clock to see what time it is. Otherwise, 3 minutes, I may think 3 minutes have gone by, 3 hours have gone by. I know it sounds absurd, but and like sometimes whenever I try to explain it to people, they just don't understand that when I say time is not doesn't work for me. Like I'm working on a different clock than people because of my brain. So everything that you just mentioned is I feel you, and I feel like between the people pleasing, the overcommitment, the time issues, I feel like sometimes those of us with ADHD brains, we feel like that's the default,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like we feel like that's the default. So knowing that we struggle with that, how can we even begin to manage that?
Yeah. Well, first, congratulations on landing 2 musicals.
Thank you.
I I love that for you.
Yeah,
I
I'm a
laugh
lucky guy.
because I can't sing, but let me tell you, my whole world, like my kids are always like, "Mom, don't sing that. Mom, don't sing." I'm always just like singing sentences in our house. So
Yeah.
I feel like I live in a musical. I love musicals.
I'd watch that. I'd watch that musical. I'd watch
Yeah,
it.
it's so good. I love it. And my husband calls me Snow White because now I have 2 cats and we recently got a puppy and all 3 of them follow me everywhere in the house. And so and Snow White sings, right? So maybe I'm in a Snow White
Yes.
musical.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 children.
Five more, and you'll have your dwarves. Five
I
more.
know.
You
I know.
know.
I need to get working on this. Time is of the essence. And and I want to say also for anyone who's listening that also experiences time and the way Kai's talking about, this is such a common experience. But
Yeah.
what is so amazing, Kai, is you have figured out a way to ground yourself in time, in the
Uh-huh.
passage of time by just setting that timer every 10 minutes to
Uh-huh.
say, hey, oh, time is passing. Time is passing, right?
Uh-huh.
So these are great strategies, but until we find what works for us, we can get lost in time and not
Uh-huh.
be doing and moving forward in the way that we desire because time is just moving by and we're not realizing. So
Yeah.
that's a huge challenge for people with ADHD. Um, I thought I'd remember your question and then I lost your question.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of answered just like how can we, like, especially when it comes to people pleasing and overcommitments, how can we manage that in a healthy way for those of us with ADHD?
Yeah, and I think exactly, right? What we're talking about is
Yeah.
figuring out what works for you using
Uh-huh.
visual. I say visual because I am like the most visual human in the world.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Anything, even when I'm struggling with something, my husband, all he has to say is, Heidi, go in Canva, make it a visual.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, duh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So having the visual notes for yourself, sticky
Mm-hmm.
notes, like Kai is doing, setting reminders, setting timers, right? A
Mm-hmm.
checklist, all of those different things. One of the things I love the most, and it might be a little bit more specific to my challenges, is whenever I have an opportunity or if I ever get offered a beautiful musical, I would say, that sounds like an amazing opportunity. Can I get back to you in
Mm-hmm.
3 days? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're acknowledging, and the acknowledging piece is because I'm soft. I can set
Mm-hmm.
boundaries, but I'm going to do it in a soft and
Yeah.
gentle way.
That
Right.
was
Whereas
actually going to be one of my questions, like how to say no in like a low stakes, like low pressure way. That's actually leads into one of the questions that I have. So I
yeah.
would love for you to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to honor who you are, right? When I'm
Mm-hmm.
teaching boundaries to my coaches in training, a lot of the coaches are like, "Yeah, but I don't want to just say no." And it's like, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to just say no. You still get to set boundaries and honor who you are. My husband can outright say, "No, it's not going to work." Or, "No, I don't want you to do it that way, do it this way." Whereas I'm like, "Oh, I appreciate your brilliance here and how you thought to do it this way. And I'm wondering if we could do it this way." Right.
Right.
So for me, it's just that reframe. Like I always want someone to feel appreciated and acknowledged. And wow, what a beautiful opportunity that is. I love that. And I'm wondering if I could just check my calendar and get back to you. Right. So it's really setting it up for that person still feels like, okay, yeah, like they heard me, they're considering it, they're listening. And then we can go and we can actually give ourselves a moment to process information, right? So that we're not doing things without looking. And that's a lot of what coaching is. Even when I'm working with someone, oftentimes they get super pumped and
Yeah.
we discover something and they're like, I just want to jump off Zoom and run and do this thing. And it's like, oh, wait, let's take a look around. Right?
Yeah.
What do you need to be considering here? What does your week even look like? How might this fit into that? And just
Mm-hmm.
helping us slow down enough so that we can align it with where we're going and what's important. And that actually just brings me to something. If you don't know what you value, what is important to you, you can't set up boundaries to protect it.
Facts.
You can't.
Factual information. No lies detected.
I love that. And it's right. It's like, what? And that's why a lot of people struggle is because they don't know what they truly value, where they're going, what their goals are. they don't have a grip on that in coaching. And I actually have a few clients right now, and they're calling it their lighthouse, right? Their North Star on a compass.
Yeah.
Everybody has these different ways of describing it. And it's through coaching all the time it comes up.
Yeah.
Right. And if we're clear on this is where I'm going right now, for example, I have a very thriving business. I am an assistant director at a level 2 ICF accredited training program. My schedule is very busy, and this is my ministry. This is my purpose. I am building into the kingdom of God by doing this work. It is very hard for me to this day to not heavily serve into my church. I serve in a few ways, but nothing compared to what I've always done. I consciously always have to make a choice. This is my ministry. This is where I'm going. This is how I'm serving. This is what's important right now, because I know I have this goal, right? So I have to say no to some things, like the greeting team. Oh, Kai, the greeting team. I used to run the greeting team, put me in the front of the
I
church.
could so see you doing that.
I loved it.
100%.
I made wooden signs that said, come as you are welcome
Yeah,
here. And just,
that's hilarious.
that's what the Bible teaches us. Church is meant to feel like this, this place where everyone is welcome and everyone is accepted. And my heart for making people feel that way is huge. So to say, no, I cannot do that. See, I almost started singing.
I saw, I caught on.
That right now is hard. But what keeps me grounded is knowing what my purpose is, knowing what my values are, knowing what my mission is right now, and knowing where God is leading me. And if I'm honoring that, what am I saying no to honor this? Right? But if you've got to have that clarity on where you're going.
Right. You're such a natural dopamine boost. I love you. Like you're amazing. I love it.
Lots of dopamine over here, Kai.
I love it. I need all the dopamine I can get. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about boundaries causing tension, though, because obviously all of this is easier said than done. And sometimes we people please in order to avoid confrontation or to, avoid any sort of potential issue that we can see coming up. So what do we do when boundaries cause tension in a relationship, whether it be romantically, coworkers, friends, whatever it may be? How can we handle that in a healthy way?
Yeah. And one thing I don't promise much, but I'll promise you it will happen. Because what happens is you were saying yes to everything. You were people pleasing. You were doing everything at people's requests and what they needed, and always showing up and burning yourselves out. And like you said, when you pick the two musicals and you realize they overlapped, you're like, I would never inconvenience them to do it. Like I will burn myself out and work tooth and nail to make sure that they get what they need here. Right. So when we do that for so long, and then all of a sudden Kai's like, actually, I can't do that right now. That's going to push me over the limit. So I'm not going to be able to do that. There will be people in your world that are not okay with that. A big example of that is I have several brothers. So I can say with confidentiality, I have a brother who we had this relationship where there was a lot of me giving. And when I set boundaries and started protecting my yard and put a fence around it, we don't talk anymore, because I'm no longer serving them in the way that makes them happy. Right. So there will be consequence. There will be, there will be tension because of that. But the reality is when we do it and we speak the truth in love and we are honest with ourselves, we are respecting and saying yes to us. The people who love you will respect your boundary. They will. Right. And it will take time. Often in coaching, I have clients who when you start to uncover who you are at a heart level, they start setting boundaries because they want to protect who they're finding out that they are. And then they'll come back and they're like, Heidi, I thought that this was a good thing, and I'm setting this boundary, and now this person is upset with me. Then we dig into what is it about being upset that is hurtful right now. And we start looking at those feelings, because often we can start to separate that for someone so that they're able to we can't choose how people decide to take what we tell them. That we
Right.
can only work with what's in our control, right? So
Right.
it's helping people get grounded in that and believing in their why, in their light post, in their North Star, right? Let's go back to the why you set up this boundary. What makes this significant for you? There was a
This,
piece that, oh, what were
this
you
is the
going to
second
say?
time I've heard. Oh, I'm so sorry. You mentioned North Star, and Chris Wang was talking about North Star as well. So it's so nice to like see this like recurring theme like pop up in regards to this conversation. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. And there was a piece of something you said that made me write down the word follow through. So I think what's so interesting is we can start to learn about ourselves and that North Star and why we're doing what we're doing and we're setting up the boundaries. But let's not forget about the forgetfulness that we have.
Yes.
And
Yes.
in order to set up a boundary, there's this other piece that we don't really talk about, which is the follow through, which can also be very challenging. So we have to not only set up the boundary, we now have to follow through on the boundary and sometimes enforce the boundary and put a consequence if someone doesn't respect the boundary. So it's kind of like when we think of breaking down a task for someone with ADHD. You said it sounds simple, right? So it's like, yeah, set up a boundary. But we also need to look at what happens after we set up this boundary. What happens if this person doesn't listen to my boundary and crosses it? Then what do I do? Right? And then it's 4 months later, remembering that you even set up that boundary. And I say that
That's hard.
laughingly,
Yeah.
right? Because my husband, I'll go to do something and he's like, Heidi, didn't this happen? And I'm like, this is a very good point. And do you remember what else happened here so that I can implement that? Because it is a gift. Me and one of my children, we have the gift of just forgetting those things. It's good because we hold no grudges. We harvest no, ill intent in our heart because we forget a lot. But in those moments of setting the boundaries and remembering that you've even set them, right? That follow through, we also have to be super mindful of as well. So that's where those visual pieces come in place. You might have a journal. When I say journal in whatever way makes sense for you, but you might have a journal of the boundaries that you're setting up, the things you're learning about yourself so that you can constantly be revisiting that so that you don't forget.
And I feel like doing that kind of thing, it's kind of like a mindset shift, right? Which is hard, especially for those of us that struggle with self-compassion, right? Because I think a lot of times people may struggle with this, what ADHD or not, they struggle because they fear that this kind of mindset shift is them being either difficult or selfish, right? And we have to find a way to challenge that mindset, challenge that discomfort that we sometimes feel. What would you say to somebody listening right now that probably feels selfish whenever like because I'm a recovering people pleaser, and so like sometimes I'll just feel selfish. I'm like, no, I like this. I don't want to make this about me, blah, 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 kind of thing. What would you say to somebody that's listening right now that has that kind of mindset?
Yeah, I think it's such a great question because so many of us feel that way, whether we say it out loud or not, whether it's conscious or unconscious, we just have that feeling. And the biggest thing I would do is dig into that. What is making me feel selfish in this situation? How do I define selfish? Because what can happen is as we're growing up and going through our life, we start to define things in certain ways and we start to create rules and beliefs that actually aren't true. So not to kind of, give coaching a little bit of a shout out, but that is what coaching can interrupt, right? Is those thought patterns that we're having and the way we define different things in our world. Because the sooner you dig into that feeling, the sooner you can get through it. We have to sit in these feelings. We spend so much time shoving it away, even for you in the musical, Kai, right? You're like, I'm not going to inconvenience anyone. I'm just going to push and do this. So you pushed it down and shoved it away. And you're like, I'm going to buckle down and I'm going to get this done. So this is a habit. This is a neural pathway that is very strong. So to change that takes a lot of work, but we have to be willing to do the hard work and sit in the uncomfortableness and explore it and look around in a way that we have not before, because we have to have a shift. We have to have a new way of thinking and a new way of being to move through it. Or that neural pathway of doing that pattern over and over again, which does give us dopamine, which gives us a rush, which makes us feel important, right? We'll keep falling back to what is comfortable, because our brain will always default to what is comfortable, what we've always done. So it's a hard choice to do it, and it takes time and it takes a lot of effort.
I agree. And I think even more important is setting boundaries with ourselves as well, not just other people. What does it mean to set a boundary for ourselves?
Yeah. I think of, what does it mean to keep our word to ourselves? What does it mean to be someone who wakes up and does what they say they're going to do and honors themselves, right? I think that's what it is. It's, I am committing to myself to be the person that I truly am, and not walking through the world being a chameleon, blending in just to be liked, or not, with the fear. A lot of it is fear of someone not liking us, fear of someone judging us, fear of saying something wrong, right? And we can't control any of that. So the sooner we stop controlling the things that we can't control, the sooner we can just focus on ourselves and honor who we are. And when I think of someone who, I don't know if anyone likes working out. I'm sure there's some people who like it, but for most of us humans, right? It's like, I don't want to do this today because it sucks and I don't love it. But
I don't, the process of getting there is the issue. I love working out. It's the process of getting to the gym is the hard part for me.
Absolutely. Exactly. And once you're there, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. You're working out. You got the dopamine, your body's feeling good. You feel great after, but it's just the getting to do it. So oftentimes I remember for years, I did not give myself an out. I did not give myself a justification. I didn't even let my brain start to, because we are really good at convincing ourselves, you know what, Heidi, you worked out yesterday and you actually stayed for an extra 20 minutes and you ate a salad this morning. So you're good today. We're very good at that. But if we just say, I am going to be the kind of person who does not let myself even dabble in those thoughts, and you do what you say you're going to do without even going there. Right. So it's a thought, it's a shift in perspective, a shift in what we're telling ourselves. That narrative, pay very close attention to how you speak to yourself. On my social media, I talk about that all the time, because that is the lies that form how we see ourselves. And if we don't see ourselves as worthy, we don't see ourselves as important, as for someone who has value, then of course we're going to do everything for everyone else, because we're not important. We don't deserve that. We're not worthy of that. Right. And we tell ourselves with this little tiny whisper.
Right. Well, why is it so important for ADHDers to protect themselves? Why is it so important for us? Because I mean, I know the reason why, but I would love for you to talk a little bit specifically about the reasons why protecting our time, our energy, our focus. Why is it so important for ADHDers specifically to protect those things?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear what you're thinking, because I'm sure we might be close. I'm not sure. But I kind of think of it as, you're either thriving or you're surviving.
Agreed. Yes. I put it in the term, are you swimming, or are you just bobbing? Are you just treading water? What are you doing? And how are you getting to your next destination, whatever your next goal is? You had mentioned controlling the things in life that you can control, and that it's so fun. This is why we connect, because there's in the musical, and my listeners hear me say this all the time, but this moment stands out to me. In the musical Hamilton, there's a song that Aaron Burr sings called "Wait for It," and in that song, he says the line, "I am the one thing in life I can control." And I remember listening to that for the very first time. I was driving home in a snowstorm listening to the Hamilton soundtrack. And I literally pulled over my car because I have never connected and learned something from just like one sentence in the longest time. And so and that stuck with me for forever. And I feel as though when we're able to focus on the things that we can control, ourselves, our feelings, our reactions to things, I feel like that makes it easier for us to navigate life and to protect things that mean a lot to us. But it's easier for me to protect my time because now I'm not worried about other people's time. I'm worried about my time. It's easier to protect my energy because I'm not worried about my friend's energy or my mom's energy or my coworkers' energy. I'm focusing on my energy and how that could maybe positively affect other people's energy, like so on and so forth. And so I kind of shifted my mind to working on me and protecting myself. And in return, it kind of ends up being a good thing for the people around me because, and this alludes to this goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, showing up as your best self. If I want to show up as my best self, I have to I have to set boundaries. I have to protect my time, my energy. Otherwise, that resentment that you talked about before, I'm going to have that resentment. It's happened. It still happens sometimes if I'm not like really thinking about it. I get this resentment, I end up going down, and I go back to treading water. And I don't want to tread water. I want to swim.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a good point. Listen to your body. Your
Yes.
body is telling you what
Hmm.
you're experiencing, and that is your cue to say, oh, what is that feeling? I don't
Hmm.
love that. What's happening here? And where is that
Yeah.
coming from? So, and we've spent so much time shoving that down and pushing it aside because it's like, no,
Hmm.
we got to keep going. We got to please.
Hmm.
And what you're talking about, Kai, is this beautiful, healthy separation of we are in this relationship and we are connected, but I
Hmm.
recognize what is yours, that is
Yes.
you, and this is me. And
Those
we can
fences
build,
that you were talking about in the beginning, like the house fences. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, and we can build strong relationship, and it's a fence because it has a gate, and you can let
Yes.
things in and let things out. So it's not a fortress, right? Where it's like
Hmm.
nothing's getting in here. It
Right.
is a gate so that it's like, ooh, you know what? I need to let that out, but I can let
Yeah.
this in. So there's this
Hmm.
choice with it.
Hmm.
I know we're running to the end of our time. I could talk to you all
Go
day
ahead.
about this.
No, you're good.
There,
You're good.
when I think of that idea of just letting go of what isn't in our control, I started, and I haven't finished it, the book Let Them by, I think, Mel Robbins, right?
Yes. Yeah. I've heard her talk about this. Yes. I love that ideology. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. And she tells it so well because she has a lot of
Hmm.
stories, which I'm
Yeah.
terrible at storytelling, but I love when other people do it.
No,
Yeah.
I'm gonna call your bluff on that, Miss Fishbein. Mrs. Fishbein. I'm gonna call your bluff on that. I don't think you're bad at telling stories. I
Well,
think
I
that is a lie,
appreciate
a
that.
tale, and a fallacy. I do not believe that at
Well,
all.
I choose to accept that, Kai. I'm going to take that and I'm going to appreciate that. And through the book, it really does. It talks about just this idea of let them, right?
Hmm.
Because if we say no and we do it in a way that honors who we are and how we want to do it, and we're choosing to say yes to ourselves or our mission or our purpose or our direction, and someone chooses to take it in this different way, let them take it that way,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Separate that from you. And I say that, but I know that that's hard. I'm an empath. I can feel woo,
Hmm.
so much
Hmm.
emotions, and it's so easy for me. If
Same.
anyone in my house, I always say curmudgeon. If anyone in my house
Oh.
is being a curmudgeon, I'm like, you need to take that energy, you need to put it somewhere else.
Yes.
I can feel
Yes.
myself becoming a curmudgeon right now.
Moods are contagious. I live and breathe by that. I think that moods and energy are 100% contagious.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So saying that it's not easy and you might feel
Hmm.
yucky when you say no sometimes,
Right.
right? But the more we do it, I think of it as a muscle that we're practicing.
Mm.
We're getting used to saying no and feeling and hearing and going through the result of saying no. And the more we do it, I always tell my clients when they say no and they set a boundary and they come back and I'm like, look, you're alive. You're here. You survived
You did it.
it. You made it,
Yeah.
right? So it is it is practice like anything else. And it is hard, but it is practice.
Yeah. And it's worth it.
It's so worth it.
100% worth it. Heidi, I appreciate you so much. You're just a bundle of wonderful energy that I just want in my life. So I would love to have you back, and to talk more, because there's so many different directions that we can go with this. But just to kind of wrap things up here, can you just give some final words of wisdom to people, specifically with ADHD, adults with ADHD that might be struggling with their ADHD and setting boundaries, that they're listening to this episode right now and they're like, okay, I hear you, what now? Kind of thing. What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, I would say there's lots of books, but there's also audiobooks, there's podcasts, there's little videos, there's all kinds of information about boundaries and really starting to understand what they are and how to do that. But I think that first step is what you're sitting in right now, is just the awareness of, oh, I can do this. I remember that feeling of realizing I can say no and they might still like me, or they might still be my friend, or I'm not going to feel so bad that I can never look at them again, right? And it's empowering. It is life-giving. It teaches people how to treat you. It changes the way you move through the world. So I think the first thing is sitting with that feeling and just reflecting on that, and however you best reflect, and figuring out for you, what is that first step? Is it figuring out more about who you are and what your purpose is, and what is your why? What is that north star, or that north on the compass for you, however that lands? And then taking that first step. That's the biggest thing. Is it's going to be hard. It's going to be scary. It's new. Change is always uncomfortable, even if we want it. Right? And have support and community, whether that's your church community, whether that's your local, whatever that is, your friends. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know that you're stepping in and trying something new. We want to do this together. We were never meant to live this life and walk our journey with ADHD alone. We were meant to do this in community. And I think that's why I know you, Kai, are passionate about spreading just awareness about ADHD, as am I, because we want you to be informed. We want you to know. You can reach out to us. We are in this together. We're not doing this alone.
Agreed. I love this. You're wonderful. If somebody's listening right now, it's like, I like this Heidi person. I want to learn more. Or where can they connect with you? Where can they get more information about you?
Yes. So my website is lifecoachheidi.com. I recently got Instagram. I'm going on about 3 or 4 months.
Welcome to the Instagram family.
Thank you. It's quite customizable and beautiful there.
Yes.
So if you want to find me on Instagram, I made my handle before I knew that I could do it shorter, but it is Heidi Fishbein, life coach. So you can come find me there. I make lots of videos. I love sharing resources. I have a little bit of a problem in Canva. Anyone who knows me knows I love Canva, but I love creating resources. I have so many free tools on boundaries, time management, everything you can imagine on ADHD. I've got something free for you.
Amazing. I'm going to include links to all of those things in the description of this podcast. So all you have to do is click, and it's right there. Make sure you go follow Heidi on Instagram. Make sure you go visit the website, reach out, and let her know what specific questions or things that you have, and perhaps she can help you even further than all of the wonderful information that she dropped today. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and your insight and your knowledge and all of that. I really do appreciate you.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Absolutely.
The best way to start my morning.
It's a good start. It's a good start to the day. I love this.
Solid start. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just know that I'm going to have a good rest of the day now. Like sometimes you just know, and I'm okay with it. I'm going to accept that. And I just know that I appreciate you.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found a little bit of comfort in today's episode, and I hope that you're walking away with a little bit of encouragement, and I hope that you laughed a little bit along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. Let me know what you thought of the episode. I really want to hear your voice. I want to hear your story. I want to hear all about your journey Let's keep the conversation going. Make sure you follow me on all of your favorite social media platforms. Follow me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, at The Vibe with Kai for more tips, more laughs, and more real talk. Remember, my friends, you are not alone on this journey. We are in this together. And until next time, stay kind to yourself, embrace the journey, and keep vibing. I'll catch you next time. Much love. Good vibes.